Hi, I'm Shoma Chaudhary. Thank you for watching Inquiry. This entire week, there's been white hot focus on the escalated tension between China and India, the brutal face off between Chinese and Indian soldiers, the incursion of Chinese troops into the Indian LAC, and the response of the Modi government. Now, as military level talks bring down tensions and there's talk of de escalation, some important questions still remain. Was there a big intelligence failure? Are there aspects of the Chinese aggression that we are overlooking? What is the Chinese psyche and what is its game plan? Earlier on inquiry, I spoke to Lieutenant General D.S. Huda, a former chief of the Northern Command and a general who oversaw the surgical strikes into Pakistan. Today, I have another very experienced and respected guest at inquiry, Lieutenant General B.S. Jaswal, part of a soldier family for 3 generations, a man who lost his brother to the 1965 war and who has himself been the chief of the Northern Command. Thank you so much for joining me on Inquiry, General Jaswal.
Pleasure's mine. Thank you. Great honor.
So, sir, I just wanted to start with, as I said, there's been a lot of high wire tension, but now, even as we speak, already there's a de escalation process with military level talks. And there have been these kind of tense moments earlier with Doklam and Chumar. This time, of course, they seem to have done a much larger and wider pincer movement. So what is China's game plan? What is it that they hope to gain by these repeated incursions and then withdrawals?
The Chinese have been known for creeping assertiveness, and they believe in the philosophy of possession is ownership. So they have now extended the narrative saying, no, Galwan Valley is ours. And they wanted to occupy that so that ownership is theirs. Basically, the aim was to dominate the DS, that is Darbuk Shiok, DBO Road. China probably wants to give a message because of our closeness with US, and US and China, of course, they are having a rift amongst themselves. Then China is very worrisome about its CPEC, which is going through Khunjerab and through Gilgit-Baltistan and then through POK. When we announced 370, he got worried that we are also going to claim POK now. There are 25 legislative assembly seats.
The Home Minister did, in fact, flex muscle.
He said so.
That we will take over POK and Aksai Chin.
You're right. We will get POK at all costs, he said. Now the CPEC, Chinese have already invested for 41 billion because China has its interest of getting into the blue waters through Gwadar. It has invested already so much. It cannot let its project go, unexecuted. So he's shown solidarity towards Pakistan by coming in this area. Yeah, you were saying something?
No, I was saying, so, sir, you're saying that the entire scenario now has actually changed. And do you think, that the threat of China is going to intensify further, that we are in a different era now? Is that your assessment?
China had drawn certain phase lines in its leap forward, I'll call it. One was the creeping assertiveness. And this was thereafter to blend in with the thing called the coercive strategy. And coercive strategy was to diplomatically undermine India. And thereafter, having gained a position of strength by mid of the century, probably he would have gone in for asymmetric warfare against India, not the kinetic one, asymmetric one. The mere fact that Nepal, Lippo Lake, that area, you get down to the Coco Islands, you get down to Bangladesh, you get down to Sri Lanka, you get down to Maldives, all these places, he's surrounded us, Pakistan, of course, there. So he is diplomatically trying to isolate us. So this is the coercive strategy which is there. Coupled with the economic strength which China has, it has tried to do muscle flexing. And there is a kind of a competitive regime between China and India. And Xi made a statement, I think it was him or someone, there cannot be two rising suns in Asia. So therefore, it is axiomatic that China would flex its muscles and undermine India economic growth-wise, because the strategy of this century, the weapon strategy of this century is not your nuclear weapons, it is economic strength. We've been saying that we'll stop Chinese goods, we'll do this, we'll do that, etc. Out of the total 28% of its exports, etc., business, with India, it's only 3%. And we have got so much of investment from our private players. The loss is going to be a hell of a lot in our case also.
So, sir, I'll come to the economic question later. I was asking you, as a former army commander, that if you were assessing the military threat right now, what would you be flagging?
First, the Indian Army is not that of 62. You've been hearing that particular line. We have got far better, infrastructure. We've got far better weapon systems. Our combat ratios have gone up. And we are combat-hardened troops. China is not. After Vietnam, it is not fought a war. In our case, combat potential-wise, we are weaker, obviously. So for us, our strategy has been war prevention, to pull him into a battle of attrition, where if he has to go back home with a black eye, we will give him bloody nose. Because we are well prepared, very well motivated army. He will suffer a lot of casualties. But the question which is there, which may upset people, is he going to fight a war against us in the manner that we are expecting? Physical, kinetic? Or is he going to fight an indirect form of war, because his philosophy has been win all without fighting? His stature in terms of cyber warfare, space, you go in for any other system which is there, which is available to him, your EMP attacks, etc., he's way ahead of us. So what happens? We are well prepared. If we draw him into battle of attrition, there's no problem. We'll defeat him.
So what are EMP attacks? Could you?
Electromagnetic pulse. What happens is you explode a bomb with electronic emissions, say about 300 kilometers above. Now with that, all your communication systems, they go off. So you cannot communicate to your guns, to your aircraft, etc. to come in. And the worst form is how he can subdue a country is through cyber attack. Way back in 2008, when I was in 4 Corps, I had carried out an assessment. That time, he had 26,000 information warfare warriors. So if that was the state that time, I do not know how much is the strength today. And they've already carried out a cyber attack at Australia. Similar thing, if he does in India, well, we can suffer a lot. So he subdues an enemy, win all without fighting, Sun Tzu saying. So he may not go in for a kinetic option. He may go in for minor insertions, or claim a boundary, etc. But he will try and bring down India without fighting through his potential, which he's got.
Cause little did we know, the good times come and go, but the best is yet to come.
But so even if all of this de-escalates and hopefully everything goes back to status quo ante as everyone wants, are there important lessons to be learned from this? Was there a big intelligence failure, for instance?
I will correlate with my experience in 4 Corps area, Assam, Arunachal. Every year, China sends a division to Lhasa for training. The moment there is additional insertion of troops, it is worrisome. So all kinds of intelligence gathering, extrapolations start off. In this case, there was a division which was carrying out exercise. Besides the division, which was probably over there, that means 2 divisions were there. All the agencies, that is your RAW, your NTRO, your military intelligence, all these agencies, the sources, whether technical or human, they should have been activated. I totally concede to that point, because it is a bit too much that they came so close that they could build up in the Galwan Valley, and we came to know of it through an Australian satellite. You have to invigorate your intelligence gathering at a particular point. When you find the rhetoric rising, Xi had made a mention in a lecture in May itself one of the universities. He said greatest decisions had been taken from the crucibles of greatest disasters, COVID. Then, now this is to be studied properly. Why did he say that? Second, addressing the plenary meet over there, end May, he said COVID has affected, words to that effect, affected the landscape of China. The world has become dangerous. We should train for war. When Z starts saying such like words, it should be worrisome. Of course, basically the whole thing was towards Taiwan and South China Sea, but it affects us also. We do live in good faith, but that doesn't mean that we should go blind. Now, with that, I think the external agencies which are there, they should have got activated. So you're right to that extent that our intelligence was not in real time.
So you have a lot of experience on ground, and you know this areas very, very well. So if you were still a serving military commander, what are the areas that you would be flagging to government as big areas of worry right now?
Firstly is transparency of the battlefield. Then our weapon systems which are there, especially for causing heavy attrition in terms of long range vectors. Air Force is strong, happy with that, but we are still short of our ideal, combat ratios. I think 48 or 49 Su-30 and MiG-29s are coming now straight away. So that's a good sign. But our equipment part of it is slightly archaic. We have to get better weapon system. It is the infantry which is going to fight over there. And the infantry should be equipped well. He's the man to reach the objective finally. And other artillery, etc., which is there, we have gone in for certain improvement in the artillery pieces, the vectors which are there, long-range vectors. But I still feel that we require greater density. Secondly is the raising of the Mountain Strike Corps. It is very, very important in this area to have ideal troop-to-ground density. There are certain worked-out densities which are there. We are thin on ground out here. Just to give you an example, it is theoretical. It depends from situation to situation. When we have to fight and attack an enemy in such hostile terrain, the ratio is 1:12 to 1:15. That is, if there is one brigade, like they had got a brigade along the finger, the Pangongso, and one brigade worth along Galwan. If we have to attack or clear two brigades without further accretions coming from the rear to them, we initially would require 30 brigades, that is 10 divisions. Do we have that kind of luxury? Do we have that many divisions? The Mountain Strike Corps has not come through. You can make him recoil by doing something with the Mountain Strike Corps, but for that you must require a force. If we have to go in for a rapid transition from defensive to offensive operations, you require strength. That strength has not come. The Mountain Strike Corps, as of now, because of budgetary constraints or whatever it is, they have been shelved. So we do require strength. We require better surveillance system, your communication system with longer lasting batteries. Otherwise, it's a nightmare to, 1 month operation. How much of battery usage is there? It's a nightmare. I'm a big Adam, I know it.
So, sir, you've been giving really interesting insights into this new theater of war, 21st century theater of war, which is cyber warfare or asymmetric warfare, as you called it, which could include information warfare, economic warfare. So what is India doing about that? How are we responding to this new threat, and what are our capabilities?
You see, we as a nation, we became conscious of two things in the late 20s now. One was the space domain, and we've got the capability now to destroy enemy satellite, like Chinese had done in 2006 with Beidou 1, Beidou 2, with the missiles. Second was cyber. So cyber attacks which are going on, we were too conscious, and the whole country can be paralyzed. And the Chinese also, as per Sun Tzu, what he said, They believe in a battle of paralysis. Everything is going wrong. I mean, you wanted to access your data, you can't access it. Your money will come into my account. I'll be far more richer. You get only 20 rupees of mine into your bank account. That kind of a thing will go on. So in 2018, a cyber command was set up in Delhi, and it became functional, I think, in September, October 2019. The satellite, what they call your space agency, Defense Space Agency, DSA, the hub is in Bangalore. That also came up somewhere in November 2019. We are addressing this issue that if there is a cyber attack, our systems, our data, they should not get corrupted. Because a lot of things, your missile systems, etc., are computer based. And unfortunately, for a number of years, we have been buying chips from Southeast Asia, which are embedded with Trojan dragons, and they can be activated anytime. And of course, they've gone far beyond that. And this is one of the philosophy of Chinese. You just compromise the data system which is there and sit quietly, win all without fighting. So we have taken prophylactic action, but I won't say that a potency in that field is that much to counter the serious cyber attacks which are there. And I predict that we should be prepared to face a small cyber attack as a message. This is war of paralysis. You paralyze a nation.
So if you had to assess the two theaters of war, Pakistan and China, that India has to be perennially alert to, you're familiar with both borders. You lost a brother to the 1965 war. How would you assess India's, response to both these countries? With Pakistan, we're always saber rattling. We're very jingoistic, but we don't have the same response to China. In fact, there's been talk of appeasement. So is our approach to China and Pakistan lopsided?
Well, Pakistan is concerned, it's inherent in the DNA to remain our enemy. We have done so many things for them. Vajpayee ji has gone, Honorable Prime Minister has landed there, everything. But deceit is there in the DNA, and undermining India is the instrument of their state policy. So our rhetorics, our outlook towards them will always be negative till the time they change their methodology and they prove to us that they are genuine. We can't trust Pakistan, and Pakistan is responsible. They're suffering like anything themselves, and the devil is eating them only. But as far as China is concerned, we have been suspicious of China, but lately we were having a thaw, and even after Doklam, 73 days crisis, there also it was warlike situation, but there was no combat which came into play. We had two meetings between the two, the Prime Minister and Mr. Xi. So we were having faith, and but China still remains our enemy number one. This was mention was made by the defense minister, erstwhile defense minister also, right? Because Pakistan we can subdue, there's no problems. But a stronger enemy, you have to take care for it. And all this after what has happened in Chennai and Gujarat, etc., with Jipin and that bonhomie which has been, I'm reminded again of Sun Tzu saying, which he did in 62 also. He says that hold the dagger behind your cloak, disarm the enemy with your smile, and when he is disarmed, stab him. 62, you saw it, Hindi Chini bhai bhai, Hindi Chini bhai bhai, and there was war. Over here, our best of relations were coming to the fore, but innate within his thought process was there cannot be two rising suns in Asia. So though he was showing bonhomie, but the intent was different, we were disarmed. And that's how I think we should see China.
Sir, to focus on the upside for a moment, are there any lessons that have been learned from all these face-offs with China? Has there been more focus on fortification in strengthening our soldiers' position on the border?
You see, mobilization was a very big problem a couple of years back. The first thing what we have done is that we have gone in for infrastructure development. And this road has come up, DBO road. We're going in for Rotang Tunnel. We are going in for Sela Tunnel over there. There are a number of arteries. Even for PP14, we were making a road, link road. And that's why the clash took place. And so we have improved our infrastructure. We are far, far behind China as of now because he's at least about 20 years ahead of us. We took off late. And I can quote places everywhere. He's got roads just at places 500 meters, at places 2 kilometers away from his expected launch points. He's prepared to mobilize fast. We have not. We are trying to catch up, and we shall catch up. So our philosophy of fast response, we've augmented that with even buying your strategic helicopters, your aeroplanes, where inaccessible Globemaster is there, Chinooks have come in. So their strategic lift capability has increased. And we have gone in for a certain amount of additional artillery, long-range vectors, that which we can use in the mountains if required, very easily. So we are looking seriously at it. But if the troops are not there, you can't fight the battle. So infrastructure development is a must. And their equipment also is a must. The soldier is there, equipment is not good. Weapon freeze is there. So then he can't fight. You have to enable the soldier.
So, sir, if I may ask you a personal question, you're a 3-generation army family. You lost your brother to the 65 war. And soon after that, you enlisted for the army in the same services yourself. So what explains that psyche of the soldier, sir?
I'll tell you, it's a genoon. You see, when you have been seeing your father, for me, he was indeed something, a very big figure for me. The aura of the army, etc. It's an internal motivation which gets imbibed in you right from your childhood. Your discipline, your mannerism, your everything. And your focus becomes that. Like my son, somehow, Merchant Navy, some big shot American company, was known to my in-laws. And he says, okay, we'll take him to Merchant Navy. So I asked him, I said, would you like to go to Merchant Navy? He says, no. And I said, okay, join the NDA. He joined. Now, since my father was 16 Cavalry, and since my brother was in 7 Cavalry, where he died, got martyred. So when he used to get his commission, so I asked him, I said, would you like to join Armored Corps? He says, no, Dad, I would like to come to your battalion. And he came to infantry. So this is very, you can't explain that. It's a genoon. It's a genoon. It's internal motivation.
So let me ask you a very blunt question. One hope it never comes to that, but if there is indeed an all-out war with China, is India capable of fighting it? And given everything that you're saying, is India capable of winning such a war?
There are strategies how to fight a war, depending on your strength. Like I said, war prevention is our strategy with China because he's strong. But if we have to go into war, we should draw him into battle of attrition. If he comes into a battle of attrition, yes, he will capture certain areas. But the number of casualties that he will suffer, his status in the global standing will go down hell of a lot. It's like a goon in his street gets bashed up and goes back with a black eye. He always tries to hide it. He doesn't want to confess that he's been also bashed up there. That will be the state. The question only is whether he's going to fight a kinetic war with us or an asymmetric warfare. Kinetic, we can take him on. Asymmetric, as of now, I'm not sure whether we can take him on or not. You see, he has his, rockets and all that is far better. So combat ratio-wise, I said he's far better. But will he get into that ratio? You see, like there's a thing called CEP, Central Error of Probability, Now in the hills, he might fire a rocket. Will it hit the target? It does. He'll have to lose also a lot of men. I'm telling you, today, if he attacks India, the asymmetric warfare, cyber attack, what will be the condition of our country? The entire data, The bank data will get corrupted. Your entire railways data will get corrupted. All your signals, etc. They would be trained, crashing into each other. Aeroplanes landing from opposite sides, runway clear. All these kind of things can happen. Your weapon systems, they're chip-based, lots of them. And, they can get corrupted. So asymmetric warfare is the one. And thank God we have woken up to it. And we have got a cyber space command. Cyber and space commands are there. So it's a good thing.
Thank you very, very much.
Not at all.
It was lovely.
I hope I bored you.
Not at all.